revolutionary leaders, they start with something that's a crazy idea, or to the outside world is deemed like crazy and weird, and we don't want to go anywhere near there. Yet that's actually how change happens, when we are brave enough to move toward or create something that is missing. And so
aloha, my beautiful viewers and watchers and listeners. My name is Krista Loudspeaker, coming to you from beautiful Texas today. And here in Abundance in Action podcast, we believe that each one of us, we have a treasure box inside. And once we open it, we can start to live our dreams on our terms. And today we have a very, very special guest on the other side. And this is Elizabeth Wood, who I actually personally met in Hawaii many years ago. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you so much. It's just such a delight and a true pleasure to be with you again, even if it is only over the internet.
Yes, it's been quite many years. I think last time I saw you was 2011, if I have my records correct.
2011 or 2012, we were in winter coats.
Yeah, exactly. So do you remember how we met?
So my recollection is that I believe I was already in the Watsu pool, and you and another friend literally dropped in to the waters slightly after the start of this class. And that moment, I was very, very curious as to who you were. I was very drawn to who you were, and I knew I wanted to know more. So it actually was in the Watsu pool at Kalani. So our bodies actually, I think they called it dolphin dance. Yeah. And our bodies were actually colliding and gliding. Gliding is a better word. But if there was a collision, we were dancing together in a beautiful Watsu pool. And what a better way to get a really deep sense of your energy without words.
Yeah, getting to know someone. Aloha, let's dance, dolphin dance.
Yes. Is that the same recollection you have?
Yeah, it's actually that we jumped into that class because we had been to an introduction class with the teacher, and then she was saying that, hey, I'm gonna do this like a little mini class, and we're like, wow, we are here. And then our common friend Daniel just jumped up and said, if you guys don't have a place to stay, I have a cottage you can stay in. And I remember the price for the night was $30. Can you imagine?
Oh,
can't get anything for that money nowadays.
No, and that again speaks to the aloha spirit, because Daniel, what a beautiful human being, knew that he could help accommodate you. And actually your stay was extended, if I recall.
Yeah, and then later we came back with, I told my, Daniel that, I'm going to come back in 6 months and bring a bunch of Estonians, and I'm going to show them Hawaii. And he didn't believe, but fair enough. 6 months later, I was there with a bunch of Estonians.
Yes, you were. Yes, and magic happens wherever you go.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I recall one very special moment. Also, you were the person who actually took me, if I remember, also with some of your friends to the Yoni cave, and also later to the lava walk, and to stand so close to the flowing lava. That was like, something so incredible. I couldn't believe it. Like, I thought my draw to Hawaii was like dolphins, but once I saw lava, I knew that, wow, I'm here because of lava. So these two like experiences, like mind blowing. But then you were so brave, and you were like, hey, I would like to introduce, orgasmic meditation to you. I don't know. Do you recall that one?
Well, so it was happening on the island, and I had a sense that was something that really would, within your body, you would start to really thrive. And bubblings of the orgasmic energy. They were just calling. And so, yes, I seem to recall that as well.
Yeah. So there we were. I remember I lied down in that little cottage and I could see, when I was looking out, I think I could see papaya. So it was a right papaya right there. And you told me the story how 9 months ago you put the papaya there and now it was like ripe and, bearing fruit. So it's kind of like a human body, 9 months,
Yeah,
So
it was amazing. Yeah. And
yeah.
hopefully I gave you some, because on that piece of property, the surrounding was all papayas. So
Yeah.
hopefully you got to taste that fruit after learning orgasmic meditation.
Yeah. And so after this experience, because that was around the time when I also actually started to do Tantra and brought some Tantra masters to Estonia, and was one of the few first ones who actually dared to even advertise that, we will do naked massages, so that when people came, we preferred to do like the Tantra massage so that nothing was, covering the body. So, which was by that time really revolutionary, because Estonia was, occupied for 50 years. We didn't have freedom of speech. And of course, part of that was also no one was talking about like intimate things or sexuality. So that was like a revolution. And then of course, all the rumors went around like, there is orgy happening in Christos Place, because people were so like judgmental about, this kind of like opening. And right after that, like couple of years later, I every time I passed through New York, I started to look for orgasmic meditation. So they had like these group gatherings where people got together, and so men were stroking women's,
They were stroking the clitoris
yes,
only. And the
yes,
reason that I backed you up was because orgasmic meditation and their brand, it
is,
was teaching people the presence of just that particular part of a vulva.
yeah,
So they weren't stroking the vagina, they were stroking just the clitoris, which is part of the vulva,
yeah,
as is the vagina. So
yeah,
yep,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
quite an experience.
Yeah, and then to see like, room full of like 50 people doing that all at the same time, wow, that's like really like unheard of. And then I did the same also in London. So it was really cool to see that, wow, there is a movement going on. Like you can go different places, and where they have done the classes and courses, you could join the community. So that was something like really, really crazy, but
Yeah.
really amazing, crazy too.
Yes,
So,
yes, and I think truly the progressive, revolutionary leaders, they start with something that's a crazy idea, or to the outside world is deemed like crazy and weird, and we don't want to go anywhere near there. Yet that's actually how change happens, when we are brave enough to move toward or create something that is missing. And so I forever applaud the schools, or the not corporations, but the communities that came together around sexuality. So I just think what they did was very brave, very courageous, and I am forever changed because of that experience.
yeah, so true. But now, before we dive deeper into the realms of anything to do with the female mystical, inner outer world, let me just also read this beautiful introduction, so that people can also situate a little bit themselves, where you're from, how you have come to this moment. So Elizabeth grew up in a household with 3 sisters outside of Chicago, Illinois. She didn't learn much about sex in school nor in her childhood home. What she did learn was about disease and how not to get pregnant. She received 0 information about her body's pleasure and how to enjoy it. After receiving a master's degree in social work, she was a licensed therapist for many years. But the longer she worked as a sex therapist, the more frustrated she became by the medicalization of sexual dysfunction. As she saw it, the medical model paid no attention to a person's lack of experience, connection to their bodies, or their sexuality. So Elizabeth willingly gave up her license and walked away from the traditional world of sex therapy. It was then that she began to study comprehensive, evidence-based sex position, sex education, somatic healing, tantra, spiritual sexuality, and other modalities addressing sexual health and wellness. Her learning took her far outside of academic textbooks and further into the more holistic way of helping people with the problems they had with their bodies and sexuality. She explored pleasure and the female orgasm extensively. Today, she provides sexual education and healing resources through workshops, public speaking, and provides coaching sessions to those who identify as women and couples. Along with her business partner, Dee Hartman, she authored the book, The Pleasure Prescription, a surprising approach to healing sexual pain, to give hope and real solutions to those suffering, most often alone and in silence, from unwanted pain at the vulva or during penetrative sex. Wow, quite a journey.
It's quite a journey. It's been a long road. I'm a weaver, so of many of the traditions that you spoke about, and there are many, because once I left the academic textbook world of dysfunction, there was so much more out there, deep traditions of sexual healing, sacred sexuality. And to me, they were just more appropriate ways of assisting and guiding and supporting people through their journeys, through the unknown. So I've weaved so many of the different paths that I've taken in hopes that if there's one thing that lights up someone else, then I can support them in learning that more deeply. So yeah, it's been a road. It's been a wonderful road.
Yeah. So now let's dive right into pleasure. Like, how would you define pleasure? And then maybe we go right into the deeper one also, sexual pleasure.
So that's a great distinction, because I don't, so I believe that some of these words, pleasure, arousal, that they've really been hijacked. And when people hear either one of those words, pleasure, arousal, they link it to sex. And pleasure is what made you choose the earrings that you are wearing today, Crystal? What made you choose the color? Because it's pleasing to you. So pleasure is anything that brings a pleasant sensation, a pleasant notion, a pleasant thought into your mind. Pleasing and pleasant, that's pleasure. So that's how I differentiate it. And when we increase the pleasure and bring as much pleasure as we can into a sexual experience, we enjoy it that much more. However, pleasure starts way before we cross the threshold into our bedrooms. What do you enjoy smelling? What do you enjoy tasting? What do you enjoy listening to, smelling? And what things in the world turn your sense of sight on? To me, none of that's sexual, because I enjoy the smell of a fresh cut rose. I love a small sip of delicious red wine and a bite of dark chocolate. Those things are all pleasurable to me. We all have the capacity to experience pleasure and joy. It's innate in who we are as beings. And we forget to add pleasure into our lives because so many of us think it has to do with sex. And I'm here to say, no, please increase your pleasure, enjoy the world around you, and see how that translates into the rest of your life.
And then when we go to sexual pleasure, how would you define that?
Again, it's about what feels pleasant and what's enjoyable. There are so many ways that we can engage in sex in a hurried, distracted, not actually there, not truly present to the experience. And to me, that means that we've gone into that exchange or that action or activity rather numb or rather neutral. And sexual pleasure is enjoying all of the senses, the full body, not just the genitals or breasts, but the full body. How delicious can it feel if you or someone else strokes your hair, outlines your lips? Again, if you're enjoying that, it's pleasurable, and that's so beneficial for us to engage in more of that. Sex is the glue that keeps relationships going. And if it's not pleasurable sex, then I question, why are we having it?
Yeah. And so what do you think so many women, it seems like we don't allow ourselves to have pleasure, whether it's just like, general pleasure or sexual pleasure? Is it sometimes, so much about like what's actually lots of reasons behind there, but maybe you could mention a couple of most common ones. Why do women stop having pleasure in general or sexual pleasure in their lives?
So that's quite a complex question. And so the factors that do come into play is culturally, what has the culture taught us about female sexuality? What has the culture taught us about women's pleasure? What has the medical model taught us about our capacity in this, a woman, in a female body? Do we learn that from our culture? I'm going to go further. Do we learn that in our household? As I said, I grew up with 3 sisters, even a female dog. Pleasure just wasn't part of the nomenclature, because at that time it was don't get pregnant. AIDS had come on the scene in the 1980s. So it was actually don't die. We never had the learning and the education around sex positive messages. I like to say pleasure forward, let alone knowing how my body actually functions in this form. Most medical literature around sexuality, it was studied using a male, a cock body. So we didn't learn it in school. We didn't learn it from our culture. There just aren't very many positive messages. We didn't learn it from church. However, if you look in the Bible actually teaches so many beautiful things about sex and sexuality, but somehow that got lost. And so I think as we began to move forward through the ages, the Victorian age did nothing to promote healthy female sexuality. It actually shut us down, shamed us. We were used for procreation, but our bodies were used as recreation for someone else's pleasure, not our own. It didn't matter. Our climax was never really a part of the equation. But in order to create babies and further our species, the climax, the male climax, is what they thought was necessary. And the only thing that was of importance was that spreading the seed. So there's so many factors involved in that. It's really complex.
Yeah, and I so agree. The same with me. Like, I think when I was like 12 years old, I got to start to read like some medical book about sexual organs and like even like what is masturbation and so on. And no one talked about it. Even like when I got my first menstruation, I knew about it because my sister was basically starting hers earlier. And I was already 17, mine was still not going. And I got so worried, like something's wrong with me and so on. And all these issues were so taboo and so under the table you had to like figure it out yourself, basically.
You did. And then I really want to talk about something that has impacted most of us in this world growing up. It's not easy. It's not easy to be in the world at this moment for so many different reasons. However, sexual trauma, unrealized sexual trauma, if you were abused, direct sexual abuse, that's rampant in our society. Indirect sexual abuse could be a glance or a gesture in a boyfriend, girlfriend. Back in the day, your childhood sweetheart, you were so enthralled with that person. And in my case, I dated boys in high school. And this unwanted gesture in a car, pointing the head downward, that can create trauma, a trauma memory. It's not usually as gentle as what I just did to myself, but there's so much sexual trauma that is hidden because people take it upon themselves that they're bad, they're wrong, they're broken, they did something to deserve it. So I think that, you know, being aware of your past history, and if there was incidents of sexual abuse, sexual mistrust, misconduct, that's something that I highly, highly recommend that a person seeks guidance and counseling and support to get through that, because it does and will impact you the rest of your life, even if it's repressed down into the deepest part of our bodies. That's actually where the genitalia live, in the deepest, darkest part of our bodies. And so that energy has a tendency to get trapped there. And that's trauma.
So what's your suggestion? Where should someone start? Like, I remember this moment, I was doing a Lomi Lomi class in Hawaii, and I had a lady, she was like 88 or something, who was my partner with the massage, and she was really great. And then, you know, as you were telling, like, you know, you felt my energy. So my energy is oftentimes people just like open up, and many times they just tell me secrets they've never told anyone. So the same happened with this woman. And she told me how she was abused sexually when she was, you know, a teenager for years. And she had never told anyone that. And I said, oh my God, you're 88 and you carried it all your life, and you like, oh my God, like I can't even imagine. And it's not only women who is doing that. There are so many other women. So what do you think is like something people can do first themselves before they get to the counselor or therapist? Are there any steps they can start to work with this on you know, on their own?
I think absolutely. So forgiveness, self-forgiveness. Really explore the role of the perpetrator versus what happened to you. More often than not, it was not your fault. You didn't do anything to create the situation. Just because you were young and wearing shorts and playful outside with your classmates doesn't give anybody else the right to touch your body in an unwanted and uninvited manner. So my first request is that you look back and you just be so gentle with whatever small version of yourself. Say it happened at 6 years old and you're now 30, you're now 40, you're now 88. Just hold that 6-year-old in your mind. Use your imagination to be gentle and kind, and say to that younger version of yourself, and sexual abuse and trauma doesn't just happen within the female body. So if we have any cock-bodied listeners, the same thing. Just hold on, and as your adult self say, I've got you. I'm here to protect you now. We didn't know any better. That person threatened our sisters, our brothers, my own life. I did the best I could. So self-forgiveness and realizing that you're not bad, wrong, broken, and then it wasn't your fault. And I think that if we can be loving and so gentle, there are probably be a lot of tears, have Kleenex nearby. After you stop moving through a big emotion, please get out in nature and listen to the birds. Have the sun on your face. Hear the water burbling, gurgling somewhere if you were able to get near water, so that that energy can be cleansed. And if you're going to speak with someone, a therapist or a counselor, please get referrals. Please do your homework. Make sure that they are a trauma therapist, if that is something that you actually do want to explore. Trauma therapists, not just trauma aware, but those are the wonderful service providers that can help you and hold you through the unpacking, so that that doesn't continue to weigh you down until you're 88, like your lomi partner.
Yeah. And I so agree. It's like I had an incident as a 6-year-old. A family member was starting to play sexually with me and another family member. And of course, as a 6-year-old, I didn't know. And we got a sexual disease as well. So it's like my grandmother discovered, like, oh my God, you're sick. Like, what happened? And I didn't even know that that was something wrong, because I was just so young, right? And so once I got to the age, like, I think I started to work with myself, like really already reading stuff as a teenager. And then when I got 18, I moved to a town where they had like a psychotrauma group. So I started to like really work with this. And just recently, what I discovered with this was that, you know, this family member and this situation played a huge role as of the biggest treasure in my life. So when I went back in my life, looking at 2 other big traumas which I had, like, you know, in my life or relationships or whatever, I saw a common theme. I saw that it was always about setting boundaries, because as a 6-year-old, if I could have known that, you know, I could have said no to something which was like weird, or I didn't know what it was, I would have said no, but no one had told me, you know, and also I trusted a family member, right? So stuff like that. And then also going into this understanding, wow, setting boundaries, and then it's all about relationships. So what did I do all my life? For 14 years, I traveled to 30 countries to find my Mr. Right. And I couldn't find him. First, I understood that there is no Mr. Right. And then I just let that dream go. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to stay alone for the rest of my life. I'm fine. I'm just gonna do my mission and this will fulfill me. And then 2 months later, I was in a Mexican fishing village, and he just sails in with his white, beautiful boat, like in a movie, you know, and he is the king I'm married to, happily, you know, celebrating the 5th anniversary this year. So quite the journey, right? And then understanding that, wow, this person, this family member was actually giving me a treasure, a gift. Like, Crystal, your point is relationships. You can be here as a beacon of light for others, like not to give up. There is someone special for them, and that someone special to start with is yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It all starts with us. The more we know, the more we do our own inner work, the more healing, the better we are to actually be in partnership with someone else. The better we are, even if that relationship is with our children, even if that relationship is with our parents, our coworkers, because it has to start with us. If the more self-aware I am, the more graciously I can move throughout the world. But if I'm spilling over and I'm not in consideration of my space versus someone else's space, I tend to bleed in to other people. And when we're not resourced, none of us are perfect, thank heavens. But when we're under-resourced, some of that can happen. And then we catch ourselves and we come right back into our center. So yes, and going to your story as the 6-year-old, it was a trusted family member, and family isn't supposed to hurt us. And so if it feels wrong, if it seems, you use the word weird, if you are told to keep this quiet or else I will do X. All of those things that wasn't supposed to happen to a 6-year-old, not with what I imagine was an older family member. So yes, it definitely can create a treasure box inside of us. And if you look through some of the most powerful leaders that really have done things to change humanity, they were also afflicted or scarred by some type of trauma. And they too use that experience and the growth after that to create other magnificent things in the world. So I love that you call them treasure boxes.
Yeah.
It's a very positive and very pleasurable spin.
Yeah, and when I went deeper, I understood also, because when I found Michael was that time when I had taken like basically several years to work with my inner family archetypes, inner child, inner woman, inner man. And that last year, I really like worked on integrating all of them and listening and connecting and so on. I was so full of, in a good way of myself that I was really like not feeling lack anymore. I was really happy with myself. And that created that shift in energy that I started to attract the right person instead of like chasing the person, and then understanding also like, wow, my life mission, the reason why I maybe came to this world is the inner family archetype. So then after some time, people reached out to me and they were asking, hey, Crystal, how did you find Michael? Can you tell me? And I said, yeah, I was working with these inner family archetypes. Like, what's that? Like, tell me more. And then I just created like a little pilot group, like 4 months coaching, went through it with them. And then they went through it and they started to find their kings or new jobs or like new life and everything. And then I realized like, wow, this is the way spirit is giving us those treasures from that treasure box. The problem is that most people are so busy or so like in their negative, stuff that they miss it.
Yes, it's so deeply buried, or the so deeply guarded, like the Pentagon. That building is almost impermeable. And so what I'm going to bring you back to also is that when you did the family archetypes, you were whole. And when you met Michael, you were whole. You weren't looking for an exterior thing or person to fill who you are. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And yes, soon to be 5 years. Congratulations.
Yeah, because you knew me when I was all over, like from one like relationship to another, and there was just like a disaster. And I remember in my blog, I was like writing about love and relationships, and I had this Estonian like celebrity relationship coach taking contact with me and saying like, you are disgusted, you should not talk about relationships, you don't know anything about it because you are not in a relationship. At the time I wasn't. So but once I flipped it and understood where the key is, and that it truly is like, I have to heal all of me, all of those different parts. And when people, each person, you have heard these like different, voices in your head. And these can be like, there's so many different parts of us who need love, who need healing, who need attention. But, we need to also take that time and that consciousness and awareness and give it to them.
Absolutely. And what you were doing, I actually remember some of the relationships, but what you were doing is you were learning about yourself more deeply through each and every relationship. And if the person who commented on your blog, if they were actually aware of what they said, that would negate every priest giving someone who's in a marriage counseling.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Priests and nuns are not allowed. That's not what the church allows. And so how can they say that they can't give guidance and support just because they're not in a marriage relationship? Whether it's to the person who gave us the ring, relationship is relationship, intimate relationships between friendships. And I'm sorry that the person said, you know, how dare you, whatever the words were, write about relationship, you aren't in relationship. Each and every one of the relationships that you were going through helped create who you are today.
Exactly.
So, you know, a little short-sighted as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly. So, and also these people also many times they are not fully aware, or maybe, you know, that person was actually jealous that, you know, I was having so much fun.
Yes, absolutely. You're following pleasure. Where is it going to
Yeah.
take me? Where is it going to lead? And relationships are not easy. They're not all pleasure-based. I mean, we go through the ups and downs and we stick to it actually to learn more about, in my viewpoint, to learn more about ourselves. And it's the hardest thing ever, to be faced with that mirror and that person with whom you learn through, and hopefully who you learn with. So, but yes, you found your king. And so I'm not going to even imagine that it's all roses and bottles of champagne, because the real juice is actually in some of the struggles that we stay connected versus disconnecting. And we learn more deeply about each other and ourselves. And that just deepens, in my opinion, just deepens, in my experience also, just deepens the love.
Yeah, you're so true. And, you know, we have been now in like married life for 5 years, know each other like over 7 years. And sometimes when we look back at what we have experienced together, it feels like 50 or more years, because, you know, we got to know each other in Mexico, then we got to Hawaii, we married there, we lived there for some years, then we moved to San Diego. Now we are here in Texas, next will be Florida. All these trips to Estonia and England and stuff. So some people haven't done all of that with, you know, maybe ever, you know.
No,
So,
they
yeah.
don't leave the state that they were born in.
Yeah, exactly.
They raise the family in the same neighborhood where they were born.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all that life experience has taught you.
Yeah, exactly. So that has connected us more, that has grown the love, you know, deeper, and also understanding, you know, we all have our struggles, and how can I actually be here to support, you know, my teammate, my life partner, my twin spirit, my king, you know, how can actually me as his partner, how can I grow better as a woman, as a queen, and then how can I inspire him to become better as a human, you know. And that's been like, you know, I didn't even know what it means to be a queen. Michael has really taught me, like, I didn't know what it was to, you know, be someone who, you know, doors are opened or stuff is carried or stuff is taken care of. Like, I was just that, you know, workhorse woman from Estonia. To survive, I had to take care of everything. I couldn't like trust anyone, trust a man, no way. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, and that's the independent spirit that you are, is very different than being fiercely independent and having to do it all your own.
Yeah.
And so there's great difficulty in many women when they go to receive.
Yeah.
It's
That,
very difficult. So
yeah.
you're receiving the kindness and the generosity of somebody opening the door for you. It's hard for us because it's nose to the grindstone survival mode in this male dominated cultures that we both lived in. You know, I've never been to Estonia, going soon, but through all that you've been telling me, I mean, it was a very male dominated culture. So to break free of that and actually settle down and drop into the deepest parts of relaxation and then receive from that place, it's way more pleasurable. So you're leading, what I say actually in our book is, we coined the term living a pleasure-filled life. A pleasure-forward life is actually the term that we coined. And if you think, if a sommelier, a wine connoisseur, comes to your table to offer you a glass of wine, They will say, this is such and such forward, this is whatever. And so I realized that I enjoy most the fruit forward red wines. And I started to talk to this sommelier about how pleasurable it was to sniff the glass as he brought it to me, to watch it swirl around, and then to taste it just at the forefront of my mouth. And I was like, this is the most pleasure forward glass of wine. And so the term carried on from there. But how can we lead pleasure-filled lives? I'm not necessarily saying something of extravagance. I don't have to have a $400,000 boat. I don't even have to have a $4 boat. I can live with pleasure and surround myself in an environment that's gorgeous. I can choose clothes that I love to wear. Pleasure is always available to us. We need to tune in and turn toward it. And it's actually a very selfless, progressive, revolutionary act that we women can do for ourselves. It's that caretaking has to go an extra step. If it truly is running 10 miles a day, I am going to ask that a person who runs 10 miles a day, take your earbuds out next time, run through the forest, run on the beach, and just listen to nature. See what you can do in amping up the sensual pleasures. That, in my opinion, is a more pleasure forward run. If we really, not just, I haven't burned any calories today, and last night I had that second piece of cake, I better get out there. But can you reframe that run to what route is going to be pleasurable for me today? So there's simple things that we can do to lead more pleasure forward lives.
Yeah, and I really like your invitation to not only like sniff it, but really like put your toe in, that little thing, just, take your earplugs out, because nowadays, wherever you are, even in the gym or whatever, everyone is plugged in, like covered, so you almost don't like hear like what's going on. Everyone is in their caves. So we have this really nice little forest kind of like park here, and we have lots of squirrels there. And I always like to just go, and it's just, I think my inner child is just over the moon happy to see all the squirrels. And it's just so exciting. They're just so tiny, cute animals, and just brings so much pleasure to just like, observe what they're doing and where they're going. And then a couple of them like start to like, play around with each other and hide and seek or whatever, chase each other around. And it just brings so much joy as well.
Oh, absolutely. I made a post in my private Facebook group this morning. My husband and I went hiking with our dog, and it was the end of a really long hike, but the dog just loves to have his head out the window. And I saw him in the rearview mirror, and I took a picture of him. And even animals, even dogs feel pleasure. With that photograph, how could you not see the joy that this dog was experiencing and exuding in this just windblown, crazy, dog facial expression? And animals don't keep baggage like we do. So what happened yesterday is not still on my dog's mind. He's not still holding a grudge from the fact that I served him dinner 2 hours late last week. So what can we do to shake things off? What can we do to have responsibility for ourselves? And okay, was that intentional, what that person did? Was there harm? Okay, that might relate to what my sister did to me and whatever. So if we can be responsible and say, okay, it was a simple oversight, or maybe even possibly a mistake. If it was a mistake, I might want to talk to that person, like, what you did that really upset me or hurt my feelings. Can we talk about it? But if it's something that you got triggered by, then can you let it go so that it doesn't burden you or weigh you down I'm going to go back to the 88-year-old Lomi Lomi. Oh, she carried that for 88 years. What can you unburden in a moment, in a flash? Sexual trauma, it's a lot to unwind. So I'm not saying that anybody should let that go, get over it. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what can we do to turn toward pleasure, move away from neutral experiences? If you actually don't like running, stop doing it. Maybe you want to go to the pool. Maybe you want to be exactly like Crystal and find a dolphin pod that you can swim with. It's not easy living in Texas, but knowing you as I do, maybe you find a Watsu pool nearby. Mm-hmm. So if we can stop doing, we have to do things that are neutral. Quite honestly, there are things that we also have to do that are not so pleasant. But if we can balance that quotient and find like ways to bring more enjoyment and pleasure into our lives, then we're tipping the scale in pleasure's favor. Yeah, and I did want to say, because I didn't send it to you, Crystal, the takeaway or the giveaway, the gift that I'm going to give for anyone who is experiencing pain. We have a 5-step process that they can do at home by themselves. And I will send you that document so that you can link that. It's 5 exercises to help decrease pain. And that's something that a woman can do in the privacy of her own home all by herself, so that it makes any experience of being penetrated, whether it's a tampon, whether it's a speculum at a gynecologist, whether it's in partnered play or solo play, it makes that experience of penetration more less fraught with tightness and tension and pain. So that's my gift to the listeners.
Thank you so much. We will link it to a special gift page, and so everyone can download that one and also put it to work. So thank you for your generosity. So amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all the amazing stories and tips and tools you shared. You truly are real beacon of pleasure, lighthouse in the world. So I'm so glad I could be a little part of that. Being a little loudspeaker for pleasure. So
thank you. Of course. Thank you to all the listeners too. My pleasure.
Yeah. And to all of our listeners and viewers, please, as always, like, share, and comment. And also, if you would like to support the podcast, there is also a donation link where you can click. And the best thing is also, when you really enjoy our episodes, please also take the moment to write your review to our Facebook page, which you can find by Abundance in Action podcast username, or in iTunes, because there everything matters what you say as well. And good stuff is always even better when you share. So thank you so much. Until the next time, mahalo.
Mahalo. Thank you.